Today's episode of the Pressbox Podcast is brought to you by Bonus Room Art. That's been our sponsor since day one. Head to bonusroomart.com today to get the latest in all your sports and movie art prints that you want to buy. Check out the store. They got a lot of good prints. You can also get custom artwork done for you or for someone else as a gift. Be sure to check them out. They've been a great sponsor for us. That's Bonus Room Art and bonusroomart.com. All right, so on today's podcast, we got a few topics to cover. We had the MLB All-Star Game last night. Talk about that a bit, as well as the World Cup was just concluded with France as your 2018 World Cup champions, beating out Croatia, which is a little bit of a surprise. And finally, we'll talk about the NBA offseason a little bit, specifically the biggest news, LeBron James signing with the Lakers, and what that holds for the league coming up this year, and it's kind of a big picture view of how that affects his career. So stay with us, and without further ado, we will get into this episode of the Pressbox Podcast. Okay, so back in the Pressbox Podcast, last episode we talked about the Home Run Derby. We kind of recapped that. And when we were recording it, it was the day of the All-Star Game, MLB All-Star Game. So now that has passed, we'll start talking about that a little bit. We had the American League one last night, which I think we both predicted. We did. At the end of the podcast. But they ended up winning 8-6 in 10 innings. An extra inning. And they're at the end there with Bregman and
Correa?
Springer. Hitting back-to-back home runs to give the AL the victory. So we'll start with your take real quickly here. So a lot of people are saying, I think what I saw a stat where 95% of the runs came from home runs last night. So just kind of what we were talking about, where there's more home runs and more things like that in the All-Star Game.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, that's exactly what happened last night. You had Judge and Trout started off the game with homers.
Right.
And then you had Scooter Gennett of the Reds hitting a 2-run homer in the bottom of the ninth to tie the game and send it to extra innings. And then you had the two Astros hitting the homers in the 10th to ultimately win the game. So you had 6 runs, at least 6 runs. There may have been some in the middle there.
Some in the middle.
Yes, that were home runs as well that came from the home run. So, yeah, that's what the game has become. We talked about that on the last podcast. It's a little unusual to me that so many home runs were coming out in the All-Star Game because of the quality of the pitching.
Yeah.
But then again, I think, most pitchers in the All-Star Game, they know they're only going to throw 1 inning or 2 at the most. So they're just coming out, I think, and just trying to throw straight heat. They're just trying to overpower these guys, And sometimes I guess they leave one in the zone where a guy can turn on it and send it out over the park, or out of the park.
Yeah. I mean, also the pitching, which you wouldn't think makes that much of a difference, but it might a little bit, is you got a lot of these guys, reliever guys, who pitch for their teams in a certain role. Maybe they're 8th inning, 9th inning setup guy, but then they're getting brought into the 2nd or 3rd in the All-Star Game, which, I mean, they're still out there pitching, but it can maybe throws off their routine a little bit, and they're not quite as sharp or locked in as they usually are.
That's true.
And I'm not sure about, let me say, occasionally you'll get some starters that get brought in relief too to throw an inning if they didn't start the game. You had Severino being brought in after Sale.
Right.
He obviously doesn't come in relief.
Right.
He's a starter. So that's a little different too.
Well, also let's remember too that now that they've taken off this ridiculous thing that the winner of the All-Star Game is the home gets the home. I mean, it is what it's always been. It's an exhibition.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a chance for Major League Baseball to have its moment in the sun, for the fans to enjoy it. And I say that to say, like I said, the pitchers are they're trying to throw heat. They're trying to overpower guys. The hitters, they're not worried about moving a guy over, taking a walk, they're swinging for the fences. The home run hitters are, I'm going to try to hit this thing out of the park. Right. So I think that lends itself a little bit to the way you see the game play out because of the fact that it's an exhibition. And really, I can't remember too many All-Star games that were 2-1 or 3-2. I do remember a few, but you don't get too many like that because of the fact that you got fresh hitters coming in against fresh pitchers, and it's just an exhibition.
You had, let's see here, the American League struck out 13 times. The National League struck out 12 times.
Okay.
So, yeah, like you said, when you got guys taking big swings up there.
Right.
So, like you said, it's an exhibition, so you're going to see a little more of that.
Right.
And the pitchers that have really good stuff, too, can exploit those guys a little more.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And you, real quick on what you touched on, you said, you referenced the ridiculous rule of not having the game count. So you were never in favor of that?
No, I was never in favor of that. I think that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. And the reason I say that is because it takes away from what I just said, that the All-Star Game is an exhibition, okay? If there's going to be something riding on the game, then it's not an exhibition anymore, right? I mean, then you've got managers making decisions based on, we've got to win this game. Right. Hitters making decisions based on the same thing. Not as many guys might get into the game. Not as many pitchers might get into the game. So, the All-Star Game was never meant to be a game to decide anything. Yeah. It's meant to be a showcase of the best talent in the game.
Yeah.
So that's why I called it a ridiculous rule. And then you get into what we're currently into, where the American League has been dominating. So the National League never really had it. And I think it's ludicrous to say that, a National League team in the World Series has 102 wins. The American League team has 89 wins, and the American League team gets the home field because their league won the All-Star Game.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing was just the overreaction to the tie game.
It was.
In Milwaukee, too.
It was an overreaction to that. You're exactly right. But something, who cares if the game ends tied? Yeah. I mean, play it till 17, 18 innings. The fans aren't going to complain.
Well, there's the pitching deal.
The pitching,
there.
I know.
Run out of pitchers, you don't want a position.
Well, when you run out of pitchers, you just call it a tie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, eventually you can call it a tie. So,
to quote Sinbad from Necessary Reference, hey, we tied.
Well, real quick before we get off the All-Star Game topic, we were talking a little bit about yesterday, is these host cities. Next year you said Cleveland's got it.
Cleveland's got it next year. That's right.
And then after that, was there
the Dodgers?
Yeah. So we were kind of talking about some places we'd like to see hosted, and the Dodgers. It's been a long time.
Long time.
And I think we looked at it and we saw that after the Dodgers have it in 2 years, it'll be Oakland and Toronto and Baltimore.
They've
have
gone
the biggest
longest,
gaps.
right?
Now Tampa's never had it,
and they never will.
And they probably never will unless they get a new stadium down there sometime. Right. Because I'd like to see it there now. The MLB wouldn't like that though, because that stadium's not great.
No, they wouldn't like that at all.
But that's interesting too, because just how they go about picking a different stadium for the All-Star Game, and why there's a bigger gap between cities sometimes and bigger ones other places.
I always thought, and I guess this was incorrect, but I always thought that they went through the entire rotation of the league and then started over, but they don't.
So, right? Because they had it in Pittsburgh in '94 and then again in '06.
Right.
Whereas they had it in Wrigley in I think '91 or something.
I believe you're right.
They haven't had it since. So I guess it just depends.
And I think a lot of it is teams that get new stadiums. Like Pittsburgh got PNC Park. Right. The Mets, they've had it in Shea Stadium a couple times that I remember growing up, and then they had it there again it's when Citi Field came online. Right. Interesting to see, the Yankees had it in 08. It'd be interesting to see when they get it again. But then again, it's really not a new stadium. It's still Yankee Stadium.
You got to think maybe late 2020s.
It was also interesting when we looked at that to see that cities that have hosted the most games. And obviously New York has hosted the most because you have two teams there. And also a lot of it came back in the 30s and 40s and 50s when there weren't as many teams and there weren't as many markets. So obviously you had to have your All-Star Game in New York or Chicago, and then to see now, different teams, how many times they've had it. And how many franchises? The Braves have had it, I think, 5 times, but some of that was with the Boston, Milwaukee. So it was interesting, and I think I'd like to see it, rotated around a little more to some of these teams.
I agree. I think Oakland should have it. I don't care. It doesn't matter if they have a ridiculous stadium or a football stadium or whatever, but who cares, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you're going to play games there, it's good enough to have the All-Star Game.
That's exactly right. I agree. Okay, so now obviously we talked a little bit about the All-Star Game, and let's talk a little bit about the World Cup. For those of you out there who are soccer fans, and I think everybody's a soccer fan when the World Cup comes around.
It's always on. Yeah.
It's always exciting. I mean, I don't watch soccer, but I like to watch the World Cup. Personally, I didn't watch much of it this year because my 2 favorite teams, Italy and the United States, did not qualify. So I wasn't as emotionally attached to the World Cup. But it was an interesting World Cup this year. I think they said for the third straight time in a row, the defending champion did not even reach the knockout stage. Right. Italy won it in 2006, didn't reach knockout in 2010. Spain won it in 2010, didn't reach the knockout stage in 2014. Germany won it in 2014, didn't reach it, right. Didn't reach it this time. So that's a trend that's rather interesting to see. And then also this year, you really didn't have any of your powerhouses go very deep into the tournament.
Right. Yeah, I mean, powerhouse teams and powerhouse players. I mean, Ronaldo started off high; they got bounced.
Right.
Messi, he didn't start out as hot as Ronaldo, but he's obviously a great world soccer player, so, right. And he got bounced. So yeah, I mean, but looking back on what you just said there, Europe's kind of owning the World Cup.
They are.
You got Italy, Spain, Germany, and France now.
Yeah. And actually, if you look at since 1998. France won it in 98, Brazil in 2002, and then it's been Europe every time after that.
Right. So yeah, I mean, and then Brazil's a team you consistently think of as a soccer powerhouse, but
yes.
They weren't in the mix this year. They weren't even in the Final Four. The interesting team was Croatia this year, obviously, who I think again I don't follow the sport. I don't follow international soccer all that much, but not many people thought Croatia would be a Final Four team, much less make the final.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of interesting. And you always see these things about Croatia's size relative to other countries like America. Like it's this. Somebody said it's the size of like I forget exactly now, but maybe like a city in California, like San Jose or something like that. The whole entire country of Croatia, and they were able to produce enough soccer talent to get to the finals. And the USA can. So that's kind of always interesting and fun to look at.
It is, but then again, part of that is the nature of what the United States is. I mean, we're not a soccer country. I mean, we've come a long way. I mean, I think, but we'll never be a soccer country, and nobody's going to convince me of that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think it's also interesting too. Also interesting that you had Russia make it pretty deep into the tournament. Of course, they were the host country. Belgium made it to the Final Four. You had, Spain, Germany, mm-hmm. Italy didn't even qualify.
Right.
Brazil got knocked out early. Argentina got knocked out early. You just didn't seem to have the star power country-wise that you've traditionally had.
Yeah.
And also interesting too. I think our producer Nathan came up with this question, which caused me to research it. He said, "How come Great Britain participates in the Olympics, but England participates?" And I looked it up, and the answer is that the Olympics obviously is a national country type thing, but the World Cup is based on the federations, the soccer federation,
right.
And each country can join or not join that federation. So that's why you have certain countries be a part of the World Cup and others not be, because they're not part of that federation, which was rather interesting as well. But
it's something I never even thought of about the Great Britain and England thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what did I say? It was in 2022. It's in Qatar.
Qatar, yeah.
So, but is that the year? That's the year that they're expanding to.
I don't know if that's the year or after that.
But yeah, they're expanding to.
Well, they've got 32 teams now.
It's either 64 or 48.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake.
But we'll have to double check that. But yeah, that's a whole other issue.
That's a mistake.
So.
Well, and another thing too with soccer, which we don't realize in this, the closest I could maybe, I can't even think if I can put it close to it, but the closest I would put in this country is like maybe AAU basketball. And what I mean by that is that, a lot of these countries, these kids are bred for these from a young age, and part of Italy's problem right now, from talking to my uncle in Italy, is that their youth system has kind of died out. So a lot of the guys that brought them, Italy was in the World Cup final in '94 and lost to Brazil. They went pretty deep in it in '98 and 2002. They won it in 2006. But those guys got old, and the filler system did not have enough power, star power, quality-wise, to give Italy a chance to make a continued run. So a lot of it is how well these countries can feed the system with young talent that go to these soccer academies and spend years and years at these academies training, which again the closest I can think of maybe is AAU basketball, but it probably doesn't even come that close. So it's a different animal overseas. I mean, it's a different animal.
Real quickly here, 2026, okay, is when they're going to expand to 48 teams.
48 teams,
and
okay.
That's going to be the year that North America hosted. So, and I
That's
think
right.
I saw that, I forget the exact breakup now, but the United States is going to get the large majority of the games.
Right.
And then definitely the finals and the semifinals and all that. Then Canada and Mexico are going to get some games too. So.
Right. Which I think is ridiculous. I mean, if you're going to give it to Mexico, give it to Mexico.
Right.
If you're going to give it to Canada, give it to Canada.
I agree.
I mean, I don't understand that at all. Which
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that. But yeah, 48 teams. That's another what? 16 teams.
I think they said they're going to have 16 groupings of 3 now, or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. 16 groupings of 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Top 2 teams from each group will then advance to the 32-team knockout stage.
All right, so it's going to be a 32-team knockout stage. So basically, they're adding another round to the knockout stage. Right. Okay, and basically, it's the old adage of everybody's got to have a chance to win, right?
Yeah.
So by making a 3-team group, you got a 67% chance of getting to the knockout stage. Whereas now you only have a 50% chance.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
We'll see. I mean, we've got a few years.
We've got a few years till that happens, right?
That happens,
yeah.
Right.
But the next one is in Qatar, which has got its own set of problems from all these kickbacks and under the table payments that cause
it's supposed to be hot there.
it's going to be very hot in Qatar. Yes, I would say that in June in Qatar will be extremely hot.
Yeah.
Yes, let's just put it that way.
All right.
But, interesting.
That leads us into our final point today. It's also hot in Los Angeles this time of year.
Yes, it is.
And the big news coming out of Los Angeles kind of recently, I guess from the past week or 2 weeks, is LeBron James signing with the Lakers to kind of kick off the this year's offseason NBA free agency. And with him being kind of the first big domino to fall, after that you saw some other things fall into place. And we'll talk about some of the other moves in a second. But just first of all, with LeBron going to LA, which we kind of talked about this off here a little bit, but my thing was, and you see not only that he goes to LA, okay, which is fine, which I can't blame him for not wanting to live in Cleveland and wanting to live in Los Angeles year round. Now that he's already proved himself to be basically a mercenary, jumping from Cleveland to Miami back to Cleveland. So if you're not going to stay with Cleveland from the time you got drafted, that's fine. So you want to go to LA, I can't really blame him for that. But first of all, I want to go to the Clippers, all right, because they've been nothing forever. And I think you can kind of establish you can be the greatest player in Clipper history easily.
By stepping through the front door.
Right. Bring them a championship and kind of build your own thing over there. Whereas now he's just going to play in the shadow of the Lakers where they've got, 16, 17 titles. Yeah. They had Kobe, Magic, all the
Kareem.
A lot of the great players of all time have played for them. You're just kind of like another guy that's playing for the Lakers, which, I mean, I don't know. That was kind of my opinion. And then you see the guys that he is surrounding himself with. Who knows how much pull he has there. Obviously, he signed off on these guys, but just a lot of one-year deals with random guys that if you look at the team right now, it's just another Cavs team in the West.
Yeah, that's all it is. I mean, that's all it is. And not only is it another Cavs team in the West, it's another Cavs team in the West. I mean, against Golden State and Houston and San Antonio and you name it. I mean, the teams in the West are stacked top to bottom. I mean, in the East, LeBron could get you, me, and our producer with him, and he could win the Eastern Conference. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen in the West. He knows. I mean, he knows it. He's lost 3 of 4 finals to the Warriors, so he knows what the Warriors have.
Right.
And I don't see how the Lakers are going to be. Definitely not this year. Now next year with some more cap space and some more free agents, they might be able to bring in some more guys, but I don't see them even getting to the finals this year, which is a kind of a curious move for LeBron, given that he says he's all about the championship.
Yeah, well, so that's why they give all these guys the one-year deal so they have them off their books for next year, where you have more free agents become available. Most notably, Kawhi Leonard, who just this morning as we're recording this, got traded to the Raptors.
Correct. Which is interesting.
It's interesting, yeah, because he said that he only wants to go to Los Angeles, and he didn't specify Lakers. He just said Los Angeles.
Right.
So I think he'd be more than willing to go to the Clippers. But for the Raptors, you got to look. I think they're looking at this as a one-year rental.
Exactly.
Because
the East is wide open.
The East is wide open. It is. Now, I think you probably have to give Boston the favorites right now because they got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year without Irving and Gordon Hayward.
Right.
So they're basically adding 2 All-NBA caliber players back. Coming back from injury. So they're probably going to be the favorites, but like you said, it's them, Toronto, Philadelphia's going to be in the mix
They
probably
are.
again, even though I just don't think they have what it takes to get there this year. I'm not even sure they have what it takes, period. But those three teams you got to look at. Yeah, and then and they're probably just crossing their fingers they can hope him to stay after this year.
Yeah, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But maybe something like the Thunder did with Paul George, where he kind of talked about going to Los Angeles too, but ultimately resigned with the Thunder. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's I think it's like it's like chic. It's like chic for these guys to say, I want to go to L.A.
Right.
Everybody wants to go to L.A. And don't get me wrong, L.A. is a great place, okay? But I think it's all like smokescreen. Like all of a sudden they want to go to L.A. and it's not going to work. Everybody can't go to L.A.
Right.
And I don't know what's going to happen over there. I think LeBron. Part of me, we talked about this on other podcasts. That LeBron wants the credit if they win, but he wants to deflect the blame when they lose. And that's why
he got a perfect setup this year.
He's got a perfect setup this year. That's exactly right. But I'm wondering if he's starting to think, hey, I'm 30, what is he, 33, 34 years old?
He'll be 34 in December.
Okay, he's going to be 34 in December. He's not getting any younger. Don't get me wrong. He's still probably got 3-4 years of good quality basketball left, but it's not going to last forever, okay? The guy is not going to catch Michael Jordan as far as finals or final MVPs, period.
Right.
He's not going to catch Kobe, okay, as far as final championships. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
So maybe he's resigned himself to the fact, hey, I got a house in L.A. That's the place I want to be.
Yeah.
If we can win a championship there, great. If we don't, I'm a gazillion billionaire, whatever that is. So what does he need a championship for?
I agree with that. Like he's been. You hear about stuff he's got like working on like entertainment business stuff. He's been in some movies. Like you kind of just see this as his like last phase of his career where he wants to have fun, hang out in LA
and pursue these other things because that's the place to pursue them at.
Like you said, if they win, great. And if they win, great, and it's going to be seen as his doing.
Right.
The way the team's constructed now, we'll see if that changes next year. But if they lose, you can say, hey, like these guys are bumps around me, right? And we were never expected to be the Rockets or the Warriors and things like that.
No. And I just want to say, I've said this before, but I want to say it again very emphatically. And Stephen A. Smith said this too, so I'm not the only one who said this. Let's stop all the talk about LeBron James being the greatest basketball player ever. Okay, it's ludicrous. Right. LeBron James is a tremendous basketball player. He's got more physical skills than probably any other basketball player has ever had when you look at his size and his ability to do what he does. But he is not Michael Jordan. He will never be Michael Jordan. He's not Kobe Bryant. He will never be Kobe Bryant, okay? Those two guys maybe couldn't drive to the basket with the power that LeBron could, but those guys were assassins. I mean, they willed their teams to victory when it wouldn't happen. And LeBron can't do that, okay? And that's not taking anything away from LeBron. All I'm saying is he is not the greatest basketball player ever, all right? In fact, I would put him third. That's where I would put him.
Right.
And anybody else can put him where they want to put him. But, that's just the way it is. And, that's just the way it is.
The thing that's interesting, too, is you hear some talk that his son is, I think, 13 or 14. He's apparently a good basketball player. So some talk where he kind of did this contract where he'll be a free agent right around the time his son comes into the NBA, where the first ever father-son duo to play in the NBA, where he can sign with whoever drafts his son, which would be interesting, I guess.
Which would be a joke. I mean, come on. I mean, that's like, you're probably right about that, but I think that's like just adding to the comedy that is LeBron James. I mean, come on. It's just I don't know. I don't get that. I mean, when his career is said and done, let's assume that happens. When his career is said and done, all right, and let's put the three careers of these guys: Kobe, Michael Jordan, LeBron. Michael Jordan, with the Bulls his entire career, wins 6 NBA titles. Well, but I mean, that was more just, hey, I'm part owner of the Wizards or whatever. You know, I mean, no, let's just put that out of there. But his main career and it wasn't his decision to break up the Bulls, by the way. Okay? All right, he would have stayed. Right. 6 championships, 6 NBA Finals MVPs, so forth and so on. Kobe, with the Lakers his entire career. All right, he got drafted by Carolina, but Charlotte, but got traded. Never suited up. Now let's look at LeBron, okay? Yeah. The guy comes out with the Cavaliers, gets to one finals, gets swept. okay, decides that he's going to go or what he's going to leave, has the decision and announces he's going to take his talents to South Beach, okay, and he's going to get 6, not 7, not 8, not 9, okay, and they win a couple championships.
Well, they come out and they lose to Dallas, where he kind of melted down in the finals.
Exactly, melts down in the finals,
and they won a lockout Jordan championship after that, against Oklahoma City,
Then they luckily beat San Antonio on that last second shot by Allen, and then they lost. Okay. So then he decides he's going to go back to Cleveland, okay, and wins them a championship, okay, and all credit, but loses 3 more finals, and now he goes to L.A. and then he's going to play with his son. I mean, to me, I'm just saying if it happened. To me, it's a comedy. I mean, it's not. And again, I'm old school. All right, I'm an old man. I'm old school. It's not what would befit to me the greatest player ever. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the greatest player. As much as I don't like Tom Brady, the guy has been with the Patriots his whole career. He's won 5 Super Bowls or 6 Super Bowls, whatever, and he's going to go out with the Patriots. That's the greatest guy ever, in my view, and not a LeBron thing.
Yeah, that, and there's all the silly stuff like coming to the podium with the wrist brace on and saying you basically broke your hand before game 1, and then
coming to the podium with a briefcase. I mean, what's in that briefcase? I mean, it's like all the shots you missed that day, or I don't get that.
Going a few years back to when he claimed the Spurs turned out the AC in the gym in the arena, and he cramped up in the finals.
That's ridiculous.
It's kind of comedic.
It is. It is comedic. I mean, it really is, and I think. Gosh, I don't know. I just have a real problem. And then the thing that I have a lot of problem with LeBron is the fact that he tries to control things. I mean, to me, you're the player, okay? If you want to let the front office make the moves, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure Michael Jordan had a little bit. They might have come to him and said, "Hey, what do you think of this guy? What do you think of that guy?" But Michael Jordan, I got to give the guy credit for 2 things. All right, one. All right. He always said that he never demanded a renegotiation of his contract. He made a deal. He worked out that deal. When that deal was up, he wanted market value. Okay. He never said, "Hey, I want to be renegotiated." Okay. And 2, he would score. He was like LeBron. He would score 40, 50 a game, but they couldn't win. And then Phil Jackson came in and said, "Hey, Michael, you want to win championships, you got to score 25, 30 a game and get these other guys involved." And he did it, and they won championships, okay?
Well, that's going back to what you said. LeBron doesn't want to be coached by somebody like that because he wants to control it, have a puppet coach. And that's why he never – I mean, Pat Riley wasn't the coach, but they kind of butted heads a little bit. Like Pat Riley runs the Heat organization.
Right.
And that's part of the reason he probably left, went back to Cleveland, where he can basically control everything. And the time they did have, Spoelstra turned out to be a somewhat credible coach. He's still there, and I think what you've heard, most of the players like him and stuff. And he won something there. So I mean, it's kind of I don't know.
I don't know. You just wonder what the next saga is going to be. I can't see. I can't see LeBron and Magic Johnson getting along all that well.
Can you? That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think Magic Johnson just wants to be seen as like somebody who helps the Lakers out. So he may be liable to be like, "Hey, we got LeBron. Look what I did. Now here's the key to LeBron. Like, it's your thing." I don't know.
Could be.
It could be that.
Could be.
Yeah, that's. I'm sure at some point again in the year there'll be something going on with the Lakers we can talk about. And they lost the Summer League championship last night for whatever that's worth.
Yeah,
so it's not worth anything.
No, it's not worth a thing. Not worth a thing.
But
and real quick before we finish, let's wrap up. That this real quick, Pete. We heard since our last podcast, it looks like Manny Machado is going to get traded to the Dodgers, which we talked a little bit about that on our last podcast, and I think that kind of fits with what we said the best fit would be for him, and for the team.
Yeah.
So,
anyway. And he's somewhere that's somewhere I could probably see him resigning after the season.
Yes,
depending on what happened to Seager and his elbow and things like that.
Right. Exactly.
Well, but the Dodgers are putting their pieces together and making another World Series run.
Yeah,
for sure.
They are. No question.
All right, so that'll do it for another episode of the Press Box Podcast. We'll be back soon with a little British Open talk that's coming up here in a few days. Should be interesting. As Tiger would probably say, the course looks good, the course feels good. He likes his chances.
I feel really good.
So we'll talk British Open more on the next edition. And as always, subscribe on iTunes. You can find us there, and also follow us on Twitter at PressBoxPod to get all the latest updates from our episodes and to where to download them and things like that. So for Ralph, this is Joseph signing off on the PressBox Podcast.